Okay. So, like I said, we are going to be dealing with portraiture, and again, this is stuff that you already should know about, or at least have an idea about, because we take pictures all the time, right? You know, you go on your Facebook, you go on any kind of social network. What do? We take, freaking selfies. That's all it is, right? That's all a portrait is. So in the world of portraiture, we can show great levels of motion, or we can just show a picture just as it is. This stuff I'm going to assume that you already know, but it's still something you should know. The orientation of your paper, i.e. the rotation of your paper, depends. We have two terms that represent that. So if I had this canvas here, and I were to hold it straight up and down, notice it is taller than it is wide. We refer to that as portrait. If I were to take this canvas, turn it sideways, we call that landscape. No more different than if I'm drawing the human head, and I'm looking head on, we call this portrait, the angle of my face. Whereas if I turn side to side, we call this profile. It's the profile. Think like you're in jail, you kind of portrait profile, right? Yes?
What if they never thought about it? What if it's square?
What if it's a perfect square? That doesn't really particularly matter. Okay? Alright, so moving forward. Good? Awesome. Moving forward then, I want to talk to you guys a little bit more, again, about some specific artists.
Jesus, please excuse the interruption, but could you release members of the JV baseball team at this time? Thank you.
Awesome. So, I want to talk to you guys about some specific artists today. Let's jump to this fella. He's going to be kind of interesting. So, our first artist for today is this guy here. He's a happening looking chap. Looks like Tim Burton. Look at that cool hair. Alright, so this guy's his name is Modigliani. I've written it on the front board right up there for you. His name is Modigliani. Pretty interesting fella. So a couple fun facts about Modigliani. He has a very distinct style. Notice that it is not in any way, shape, or form photorealistic, right? It looks like this. Whoa. Not photorealistic. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't. Okay? But, what's that? Hawk. Birds. I don't know what birds you're saying. The hawk.
The green man.
Hulk?
Yeah.
Hulk. Okay. Hawk is a bird. The Incredible Hawk. Yeah, alright. Yeah, so now looks at the Hulk, right? Okay, what looks about the Hulk? Why is it green skin? Okay, he's got this yellowish green skin, right? Anything else? White neck, right? Look at this beefy neck, dude. This guy's been doing some dead presses, yeah! Oh, I'm feeling the burn, right? I mean, what is going on, right? It looks kind of gnarly, right? They look kind of like bobblehead. You're right. You're not wrong. So Modigliani has a particular style. A couple telltale signs for Modigliani's style. A, these kind of lightless eyes, right? Now sometimes you might have these kind of braided eyes. Notice he can paint. I mean, this is realistic. He can paint. But these faces lose their souls, right? He might draw maybe an iris or so, something like that. But at the end of the day, these are still kind of lifeless-looking people. He didn't want to draw perfectly, photorealistic pictures. He did these kind of gnarly-looking pictures. Another telltale sign is that neck, right? This lady's neck is broken. Okay, there's no way she's got giraffe neck syndrome. You know what I mean? Look at this, right? So again, telltale signs for Modigliani's style. Telltale. You've got the kind of lifeless eyes and crazy giraffe neck. Crazy giraffe. As long as you remember that, you're going to be just fine for understanding who and what Modigliani represented. Again, he could draw. He had a very unique style, but it's not like they're bad drawings. Everything's in the right place. He blocked in, I promise. But you end up with this very, almost surreal kind of style, right? It's out there. It's a little bit goofy looking. So take into account, whenever you think the word Modigliani, think lifeless eyes, think elongated necks. A couple things to think about with Modigliani. This is his self-portrait. He had some problems with drugs and alcohol. Who doesn't, right? He had some problems with drugs and alcohol, and it did lead him down kind of a dark path in his life. He actually died very young because of it. Talking, a lot of absinthe, that kind of greenish, funky liquid. A lot of guys we're going to talk about today had absinthe problems. We'll talk about more about it in a second. But yeah, wormwood, exactly. There's poison in it. It's weird. I would not suggest it. But other things too. Illicit drugs. We're talking like heroin, and I mean, the guy had some problems. But you can see it led him into a very unique style. So keep in mind, you may not feel that you are the most competent or most prolific artist for photorealism. This guy made it entire living doing this kind of stuff. It doesn't have to be photorealism. It has to express something. You know, so let's look at face. You know, you can't do smiley faces. That's not good. But it has expression. It has feeling, emotion. So it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. So Modigliani. Next, eyeballs. That's how you get that fella. Okay. All right. Next up. I apologize about switch flopping here. I haven't had a chance to change out. Let's do this girl next. All right. So here she is. Now, this is obviously more modern. This just happened a couple of years ago. This lady's name is Sylvia G. J-I-G. So, Sylvia G. She is very, very recent, very contemporary. I'm sure you've seen her artwork. You might not have even known it. She originally started out with Native American kind of artwork, kind of focusing on Native American culture. She has since switched over into more of a Hispanic culture. Kind of delving into their background, their mysteries of that culture, that nationalized people. She will eventually, I'm sure, switch over to a new type of nationality and see what amazing adventures that has to unfold. But for right now, I'm sure you've seen some of her artwork. And again, we're talking about stylized, right? This is not photorealistic. I know that these people are not necessarily having, two-dimensional, graphically designed, flowers floating on top of them. It doesn't make any sense, but it looks good. There's a heightened sense of illustration going on in these pictures, right? But notice at the same time, there are certain key points, even like in Modigliani. The eyes are kind of downplayed. They're not necessarily soulless, but they're very cold-looking, It's not about the woman. It's about this design, this illustration. We know that it's not photorealistic, and yet it has a certain kind of quality to it. So whenever you're seeing a certain type of artwork, again, you want to be able to kind of pinpoint in your head an artist's name to their kind of style, their particular take on things. So Sylvia G, known for portraiture of a certain ethnic background, again, whether it's Native American or in this case Mexican American with the sugar skulls. This is more of her older work with the Native American. And there she is. Cool. Making sense so far? So again, we're slowly but surely, what I'm trying to do is slowly build kind of your repertoire of understanding, comprehension for the world of portraiture, because whenever we think portraiture, we think photorealistic, we think very basic, and it doesn't have to be that way. You can have some really, really advanced fun with what you're doing. Let's see here, let's do this guy. So, speaking of kind of photorealistic. We've got this guy here. His name is Renoir. We've got the name right there. Okay. Auguste Renoir. So we've got our pretty kids here. Now notice that there is a certain style even to this. So it's much more realistic than, say, a Modigliani, right? I mean, everything's in the right place. The kids have eyes, so they have kind of these souls, right? But there still is a certain style to it. You can see the brushstrokes, and this is obviously not a photograph. It's very soft. It's very pastel. It has a certain sense of impressionism, which is kind of showing your brushstrokes, allowing them to be seen. This is a painting. He allows you to see that these are just sketches and doodles and paintings. He wants them to be a piece of art, while at the same time still be a picture of someone, a portrait of someone. Notice that, again, it's very realistic, but not photorealistic, and that's not a real kid. It's a little too fuzzy. It's a little too soft. You know what I mean? Here's a picture of himself painting himself. It's like Inception. So you get lots of these kind of splattery pieces of paint. Again, very impressionistic kind of styling. Different ideas. Again, that's kind of the take on things as we go out throughout. So if you were to see this kind of bonnet time period, we get the lady kind of reclining, she's kind of looking at us, which is kind of a little bit offsetting. She's kind of staring at us, right? Kind of breaks that fourth wall, being, background, sides, and then the fourth wall is the audience. And it's a little unnerving at times. Kind of follows you, right? But that's what a portrait is, right? This is a painting of this woman here, So keep in mind this particular kind of soft brushstroke. That's really what I want you to take away from when it comes to old Mr. Auguste Renoir. But again, they're well made, they're well crafted. There's some one-point perspective going on this handle. I know you were anxiously awaiting that. But it looks like him, right? So again, whether you find yourself gravitating more toward a super stylized form or more toward a formalistic kind of classical style, which this is still not classical by any means, but it's much more photorealistic. Understand that what I'm trying to get across is there is a gambit. There is a wide array of different styles. You know what I mean? Do not limit yourself to thinking one particular way. Go with what feels comfortable. It's a self-portrait of himself, obviously much later on in life. He's a good fun guy. I don't want to give him a hug. Doesn't he like kindly old grandpa, like he would bring you like candies or something, like, I bought you some candy. I don't know, that's what I don't have any friends. Anyway, I'm sure you guys have seen this one. This is probably one of his most famous paintings, and again, I'm sure you guys have seen this before. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't. And again, we can critique it till the cows come home. It is a larger scale painting, but it has, again, those kind of telltale signs of his style, right? Kind of those pastel colors, very soft brush strokes, and yet still, still photorealistic people, you know, still pretty close. And of course, a creepy dog on the table. This seems incredibly unhygienic. So, and then this is, in case you're wondering, this is the original Grumpy Cat. So you get some ideas along the way of a little bit about Renoir. Apologies. All right. So let's kind of pick up the pace here a little bit. I want to show you some maybe more entertaining people. Let's see here. A little more background. Let's talk about this fellow right here. Now, we know who this guy is. Van Gogh, absolutely. This is Van Gogh, Vincent Van Gogh. Now, he was a Dutchman, so you could say the correct way of pronouncing his name would be more like Van Gogh. But let's be fair, if you say that to any of your friends, they're going to think that you're having a stroke or choking on something. So you're like, oh, that's a beautiful Van Gogh. Oh, it's not good. No, just say Van Gogh. It's okay. No one's going to fault you. But understand that it's not technically the way his name is meant to be said. So we'll call him Vincent for now, because we're on a first name basis. He's a tight guy. So we got Vincent, right? Now you guys know who Vincent Van Gogh is. So at least you know the name. You should. Really prolific painter. Not super famous in his day. Not to say that he was like broke, but I mean the guy was not wealthy. You know, many artists in their time were not famous during their time, during their lifetime. It just wasn't a thing. So someday, 50 years from now, go sell one of my pieces of artwork, and you're like, wow, Mr. Kozak was awesome. And I know that's what you're going to say. It's fine, but I'll be long since dead, so I won't know all these nice things you say about me. I'm sure that's what you're thinking right now. But I'm kidding. But that being said. So let's talk about some of the basics, right? Similar at least in the same kind of brush strokes as Renoir. Maybe a little bit thicker. I mean, this almost looks like finger paint, right? I mean, there's lots of brush strokes going on in this thing, Lots of brush strokes going on. We saw this before when we were talking about one-point perspective. He allows us to see that it is in fact a painting. He's not trying to make it photorealistic. He's not going for that. You know what I mean? But when it comes to his portraiture specifically, you kind of get this almost kind of cartoony feel, you know what I mean? He's got a little bit of outlines going on, the same stuff I tell you not to do, that he made a career of, But he has a specific style. He has a very specific style. Even with his landscapes, I mean, this doesn't feel like a landscape, this is like a dreamscape, I mean, there's just stuff everywhere, and it's kind of liquidy and moving, right? It's kind of like you're on some like gnarly, like 1960s acid trip or something. Like, it's pretty weighed down, Obviously, one of his most famous paintings, Starry Night. Absolutely, Starry Night. Absolutely one of the most famous paintings. Whenever you leave, look up. It's in the ceiling out in the hallway. Out of curiosity, this obviously has nothing to do with portraiture. I'm just kind of curious as to your class. Have you guys ever thought about what this giant black turd is?
It's like a castle.
Fire. Castle, fire, tree, a bush, tree or foliage, mountain. Anything else?
Steeple.
What?
A steeple.
A steeple is like a church steeple. Okay, all right. So I'm just gonna have a vote real quick. I'm curious. This has nothing to do with portraiture. I'm just curious from you guys. What do you guys think? Like, okay, so who says it's what would you say? A tree. Okay, we got 1, 2, 4. Okay, so we got some trees. Who says it's a what do you guys? Fire. That's some black fire, man. It's like voodoo stuff. All right. So tree is taking the lead so far. Someone said a castle. Castle.
Really?
All right. Castle, tree thing. It's like a tree fort castle that could be. Mountain. You guys said mountain. 1, 2. All right, mountain 3. Okay. All right. So still, we're aiming for the tree fort. What was the other one? Oh, steeple, like a church.
Yeah, I
steeple.
don't think it is.
Oh, okay, all right. So church steeple's right now. The guy who voted it says it's not. All right. So we as a class think that this giant thing right here is a tree fort castle. Awesome. All right. I'm not gonna lie to you. There are some theories as to what this is. He himself never really came out and said like, ta-da! Like here's he didn't write it down for us. Plenty of art historians have thought about this and looked at terrain and stuff and realized that this, in case you're wondering, this is not a tsunami thing. This is just rolling hills. These are not, these are little trees going back into space. It's not like there's a tidal wave coming to kill them. But what I want you to think about, rather than what it is, think about what it symbolizes, right? Do you see this, and you don't have to answer, but do you see this as an omnipotent negative force or an omnipotent positive force? We have little tiny sleepy town right here. Little sleepy town. And this sleepy little one-horse town has the vast cosmos above it, right? So is this giant thing here, this force, whether it's a castle, fort, whatever, is this positive? Is it protecting the little town? Or is it looming over the town, waiting to strike? And I don't need to know your answer, just saying, think about the symbolism in objects. It's not always about what it is, but about what it can stand for. So, Vincent van Gogh obviously worked many years. He worked on still life, he worked on landscapes, and he did work on portraiture as well. Sometimes his brushstrokes were very large and bold, sometimes very soft. This is a pretty soft painting, all things considered. It's a pretty soft painting, pretty soft stuff. But still, those brushstrokes are very visible in his artwork. I want to give you a quick little story here real quick about Van Gogh, something that I'm sure you don't know already. What's that? Kind of. It deals with the ear. So, the prevailing theory for many years was that he was dating a prostitute, and he cut off his ear to give to her as a gift.
What?
That's the prevailing thought. Okay? That's what, because we all know, you guys already know the story, this is a painting of him after the ear, minus the ear incident, right? So, we know this happened. We have documents that say his ear is no longer attached. Now, whenever we say the ear, I don't mean like he took a knife and really got in there. I mean we're talking like the lobe, just kind of lopped it off. So the prevailing thought was that he took a knife, cut it off, and handed it to his prostitute lover. Okay. Artists are weird, but that doesn't, at least for me, that never quite sat well. Now, there are a lot of different theories, and I can't tell you 100% what the correct answer is. We don't 100% know. But a lot of new articles have kind of come out along the way, more recently in the past couple of years, and the prevailing theory currently. Okay, tell me if this one maybe sits a little bit better in your stomach, okay? So keep in mind, in your head, and a lot of times for myself as well, we tend to think about painters as maybe a little bit dainty, right? Sometimes we think about painters, they kind of get their brush and their canvas, and what do? They kind of, oh yes, I'm going to paint something now, right? And they kind of get, they're kind of emo, right? They sit in the corner and they just, right? And that's all good and fine. And I'm not saying he was never emo in his life. The guy had some problems. But understand that artists were not necessarily these wimpy boys. Van Gogh had a roommate back, we'll say college years. It's not literally college, but let's pretend. And he had a roommate named Gauguin. Gauguin was also a guy who was into this whole kind of painting scene. He was a painter himself. And we'll talk about him later on in the year. His art style is a little bit different than Van Gogh's. But they were buddies. They hung out. They were chums, right? And of course, whenever you're, kind of that end of college, early beginning of life, kind of 20s and 30s age range, and you're hanging out with your buddies, what do you do? Well, of course, you go down to the bar and you get smashed on absinthe. That's what everyone does. And if you haven't ever had absinthe, which you shouldn't have, you're in high school, don't. Okay, the room got quiet. No. Whenever you get older, they still make it. God help us. But it's this neon lime green liquid, and it has wormwood in it. And if you don't know anything about herbology, wormwood is a poison, straight out kill you poison, you see in spy novels, I put a little bit of poison in his drink. Wormwood, poison. So what they used to do is take liquor, put a little bit of poison in there, and then they would ingest it. Second period, David. Second period. So this was a regular occurrence. So picture, very Frenchy. picture these Dutch guys, you know, going to the bar and right? And they're having a good old time. And they used to get in fights, right? That's what you do, right? So on their way home, they get in some brawls, and like one of them would knock each other out, and he'd just leave them in the ditch and be like, I'll see you at home. You know, these guys were tough. They weren't wimpy boys, right? So picture Van Gogh pre-ear cutting off, right? Well, one day, inevitably what happens, they get totally smashed on this absinthe, and they go home. Now, keep in mind, this is the time, like, pistols existed, but we're talking like, again, for lack of a better example, we're talking like pirate times, like, you know, load in one pistol, like, you know, it's not like revolver time, you know what I mean? So pistols weren't really that cool. What was cool was swords. And if you were going to be a cool dude, you had a sword. I mean, you're not going to go anywhere without your protection. So you got your sword, you know, they're hanging out, and they're having a good old time. And they're having a grand old time. What do? They're totally smashed on absinthe. So what do? Swing! You got your sword. I got it. Hold on. But eventually, Gauguin, you're Gauguin in this case, Gauguin gets a little bit feisty, and he thrusts. Go ahead. Gosh! And the prevailing thought, because we have a couple of journals that Van Gogh has done. Thank you very much. It was good sword fighting. Yummy. Good sword fighting, right? So Gauguin has just lopped off his ear, right? Now, back in the day, keep in mind, at this time period, if you hurt someone in any true physical way, I don't mean like a good clock in the face, I mean like impaled them in some way, i.e. cut off an ear, you were put to death. It wasn't like jail time, it was like, you know, not eye for an eye. It wasn't like I'm going to cut off your ear. It was like, oh, you hurt him? We'll just kill you. It's easier that way. You know what I mean? Like, and no, these guys are buddies, granted, like he just lost an ear, but like they're friends, they don't want to like kill each other, you know, unless they didn't mean to. So Van Gogh quickly takes out the ear and right? So bandages himself up and he says that he did it because you can't get killed for hurting yourself. So his buddy's in the clear, he gets to live out a happy life. Eventually they actually have a falling out. And it's kind of speculated the idea, like then he maybe possibly gave it to this prostitute girlfriend, but more as like, not as like a, hi, I like you, but more as like a, hey, get rid of this, like, please, you know. That's more of the prevailing thought. Again, we don't know 100%, but which one settles more with you? He cut it off because he's a psycho and wants to impress his prostitute girlfriend, or two guys horsing around with swords? Just saying, right? Okay, so let's take old Mr. Van Gogh. Let's jump aside here. Let's check out another fella that has a pretty tortured background. Yes, sir.
You ever had
Absinthe? Have I ever had absinthe? I have not had absinthe, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, like it's still illegal in most countries.
You can actually. I mean,
Wait, don't say it yet.
okay.
It's Da Vinci?
It is free to count.
Oh my god.
Free to count. So, what's it? Yeah. No, I mean, she has some problems. She has some problems. We'll get to that in a second. So, I want to introduce another person who is known for doing some pretty cool portraits. Right? We've got Frida Kahlo right here. Now, excuse me. Now, she is very known for doing self-portraits. She drew herself all the time. All the time. So we've got Frida Kahlo here, and notice that she has a very distinct, we'll say, personality, right? You don't forget her face, right? She's got kind of like a dirty stash here, and she doesn't even unibrow. I mean, she does. She knew it. It's not like she's blind and nobody was like, hey, did you see Frida's stash today? Let's not tell her about it. Like, she knew it. It was a calling card. Hey, you know her. You know, I put the picture up before you even knew. Oh yeah, I know. Unibrow lady, that one, right? It's a calling card. It works, right? If the whole point is to get somebody to know your name, I'm not going to forget Unibrow lady. You know. So she started out doing some portraiture, and she could do some amazing portraiture, very soft paints and very nice. But she had her own batch of bad luck in her lifetime. Now I'm going to summarize things. If you're really interested, there's a whole really good documentary and a couple movies about her. Really interesting lady. I'm going to kind of piece it apart a little bit, but she had a pretty good artistic skill. But she slowly but surely got really into kind of these surrealist dreamscapes, kind of doing really out there kind of stuff, right? So here we see kind of a self-portrait of her with a necklace of barbed kind of twigs, a hummingbird, weird like Black Panther thing, a little monkey over here. Like there's some weird stuff going on, right? But it gets a little more trippy as we go down the path. This is one of her paintings called Two Sisters. she gets into the surrealist movement. Now keep in mind, this is not a weird thing for the time. Like Dali and a couple other famous surrealists were happening around the same time period, so it wasn't like she was the only one painting goofy looking stuff. But at one point, she actually got in a couple pretty bad accidents. And while she was in bed, this is an actual photo of her painting, while she was bedridden, just lying on a bed for months. I mean, months. Any more than like 10 minutes and I'm bored. You know what I mean? Imagine how bored she got, So one of her friends came by, gave her a canvas and gave her some paints and said, why don't you do some of this stuff? You got a kind of a talent to paint a little bit. So she started painting, but of course, she's bedridden, she's kind of experimenting in the surrealist style, and she also has crazy amounts of pain medication. So she starts doing some pretty crazy stuff. This is a picture of her vomiting out death. I don't even know. It's a little out there, right? It's a little out there. But it's not bad. I mean, it's still a portrait of her and how she feels, right? She did some pretty interesting surrealistic kind of stuff. It's not necessarily for everyone. But it still is not just a self-portrait in the physical sense of her. It's a self-portrait in the sense of it's explaining what she's feeling. This is her. This is what's on her mind. So,
What?
yeah. Still considered a portrait. Very surrealist. I mean, but let's be fair. How many of you haven't had somebody pick on you and feel like a wounded deer? Just, you're trying to do your own thing. You want to be left alone. And some guy keeps throwing freaking barbed, holes in your side. Like, leave me the hell alone, right? It hurts, We all have this emotion at some point. She just drew it. So, we've got Frida Kahlo here. Now, eventually, and this is kind of where it gets a little bit messed up. Think about any kind of soap opera, guys. Think about any kind of soap opera that you regularly watch, right? Mine is Days of Our Lives, am I right?
Sure.
Yeah. We're buddies, we hang out, we watch it. We gossip, we binge. So, think about any kind of soap opera, right? These soap opera plots are always cheesy, right? Every time. What happens, right? Joe loves Tommy, loves Betsy. It's a weird, messed up triangle. And if Betsy goes out with Joe, then Tommy's going to kill himself. And oh, God, aliens, right? It just gets weird, right? It's always these weird love triangles, right? How many people, God help us, how many people watched The Bachelor this last season with weird Mexican guy? I don't know his name. Juan Pablo, is that his name, right? Yeah, I know you're into it. Right? No, but you know what I mean? All of this stuff that we watch, these reality shows, right? They're always so, played out. It's always did you hear what Betsy said? Oh my God, I can't believe it. It's really boring, right? All right, so let me give you something juicy that actually really happened. Okay, so Frida, here she is. Look at her, beautiful, great, beautiful, right? She meets up with this guy. Now, ladies, try your best not to throw yourself upon this man. Try. He is irresistible, I understand. Oh my God. All right. So, she meets up with this guy and they fall madly in love. I mean, thump, 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 thump. Crazy in love. Okay? So, the downfall, which she didn't necessarily know at the time, is that Diego here, that's his name, and not to be mistaken with the Dora friend, but Diego here is her mad lover, her madly lover. What she didn't know at the time, unfortunately, is that Diego was kind of a playboy. Now, I know you're thinking to yourself, obviously, with a face like that, how could you not be, right? But at the time, he was really charismatic. I mean, the guy was all about it, right? He was walking, hey, what's up, ladies? Oh, probably nothing like that. But he was charismatic, right? So picture, and he was also an artist. He was a pretty prolific, famous artist. The guy got hired by Ford, the Ford, He gets hired to do a giant mural. When I say giant, I mean, picture this whole back wall times 4. I mean, it's beastly, And he's good. I mean, this is pretty cool. It shows the evolution of man's intent to experiment and to change over time. We got grass and kind of growing things down here. We got boar over there. I mean, there's lots of cool looking stuff, right? The guy knows what he's doing, right? But he's so famous. Well, of course, doing something this scale, you need some assistance. And of course, finding an assistant, I'm gonna get the prettiest girl I can find. Right? And after about a month working with a pretty girl who gets me my paints and I'm painting and look how famous I am and we get to talking and pretty soon, kaboo! Well, now all of a sudden, old Diego's having another affair. He had a lot. The guy got around. And I know, you're thinking, of course he got around. Look at him. Gorgeous. right? It's irresistible. I'm having a hard time not throwing myself at the wall right now. I have to restrain myself. But he did get around. He did get around. Now, keep in mind, at the same time, right, Diego is just sleeping around like a crazy cat, right? At the same time, they also, the couple, Frida, and Diego, were also at the time very much into kind of the workers' revolution. So we're talking like the kind of the communist revolution over in Russia. It was just kind of starting, and they were a part of it. They were big fans of communism. They thought, you know, up with the worker, down with the businessman. We want the workers to reunite. So they hung out with a lot of communists. And Frida found out about all of Diego's canoodling on the side. So Frida wanted to get back. So picture like if you hang out with your group of buddies, right? And you got like two ladies, just like in a soap opera, right? Two ladies and a dude. And the dude starts sleeping around, and the other two ladies are like, F this. So they start going to other places, right? So what does Frida do? She sleeps with this guy. His name is Trotsky. Now, Trotsky's a Russian. He's a communist, right? And so they're into that. Like they're communists too. It's not like a weird thing, right? But she starts sleeping around herself. But they never quite break up. They always kind of like, oh, I'll sleep over here. Oh, you know what? I'll come back. Oh, I'll go over. Oh, I'll come back. So they're this really weird couple, right? They never quite, you know, break away. They're just kind of like, oh, we're gonna go sleep around. Oh, but I'm so sorry, and they come back again. And they make up and do other things, and then they go sleep around some more. It's a weird situation. But Trotsky, in case you're wondering, was a pretty well-known guy at the time. I mean, I'm not saying that you should know him necessarily. As you get older, you'll probably learn more about him. But imagine, like, I don't know, what's someone you would hear. I think you're like an author you would know, like Stephen King. Okay, granted, not a handsome man. But picture, like, if I, oh yeah, lady friend got together with Stephen King. You're like, wow, Stephen King, that's pretty cool. Like, I mean, he was famous. He was a well-known man. So if it hit the press, it hit. You know, Diego's just sleeping around with assistant ladies, just regular old people. She goes for the head cheese, you know, she wants the big kahuna. So horrible. I mean, like crazy, worse than a soap opera. Everyone's sleeping with everybody else, no one knows which end is up, it's craziness, and she still finds the time to do some crazy good self-portrait. So realize, no matter how much drama your life has, it doesn't beat Frida Kahlo. I assure you of that. So let's talk about a couple more people here, just real quick. I've got two more artists I want to tell you about very, very quickly. Whoops. All right, so here's another fellow for you. This guy's name is Albrecht, which is Albert. He's a German. Albrecht Dürer, D-U-R-E-R. Now, we're going to talk about this self-portrait in a moment, but I want to show you what Albert Dürer is known for, which is, even though he does have a background in painting, he has a background in drawing, he's very, very prolific and very, very photorealistic for the time period he's at. But he was into this stuff. Okay? What he did was a thing called etching. So think about kind of like a stamp, only if I took like a hunk of metal, right, picture like a big metal plate, and I take a piece of metal kind of scribe, and I like a stylus, and I carve into it. And where I carve darker, it gets like black. And where I carve really lightly, it gets white. And I apply ink over top, and I slap it down and I make a print. Right? What's cool about Albrecht Dürer, and the reason we're talking about him specifically in the world of portraiture, is that he did some crazy detailed work. This is not a drawing, this is a print. He carved this in reverse in metal, and then printed it. That's pretty crazy. Now, his anatomy is not always 100% correct, but it is extremely, extremely detailed. But the reason we're talking about him specifically is that old Albrecht Dürer, you can see here, we got 1513. That's when this was made. Oh my God, right? Old, right? But he was one of the first artists to become a commercial success because he really embraced the world of printing, right? So imagine for a second, again, take yourself back into this time period, right? We kind of have like, the printing press is kind of starting, it's not Gutenberg's printing press, really hammering things out, but like, we can print, right? So I might get like, instead, your newspaper would be like a little leaflet, but you still can print things. I can put text down and print a piece of paper and make 100 of these copies, right? Kind of like the photocopier of its day, right? So old Albrecht here, he caught on to that, he got into etching, and really got into etching. I mean, this is gorgeous. Here's another one here. Really got into etching, and he started making these prints, these pictures for books that are being created, right? So we're hammering out textbooks, we're hammering out new stories, things like the Bible, And he's making the pictures for it. This guy is pretty well known. He gets his name out there. But what's cool, think about like an artist, right? A lot of times when you think about fine artists, what happens, right? They don't really tend to be too worried about how much their artwork costs, right? They just want to make something. They're fine artists, right? So it's kind of like, oh, I'm gonna paint this. Oh yeah, it's beautiful, it's great, it's exactly what I wanted. And then someone comes along and says, oh, I'll buy that. And you go, oh yeah, $5, 10, here, just take it. Right? They're not really businessmen. They're not haggling for the price. You know what I mean? Albert, on the other hand, was a businessman. First and foremost, was a businessman. He had some great skills, maybe not necessarily in the world of anatomy, but he had some great skills. And he would take these prints, these metal blocks, and he'd print out a crap ton of these things. And then he'd go around and sell them. You know? And there was no copyright, there was no nothing. I mean, he got to make all the money. You know? Normally, in the world of art, what you do is you take your paintings, and if you wanted to be a businessman, obviously you're an artist, you can't handle it, but I give it to someone, and they would sell it for me, and of course they take 50% off the top, right? So they might sell it for $5,000, but what am I going to get, like $1? You know? And I'm happy, I'm like, oh, I can't eat! And he's rolling in the dough, you know what I mean? Albert said, screw the system, I'm going to sell it myself. So he would literally walk around with stacks of papers, these prints, or drawings, and he would just sell them himself. He'd, hey, do you like this? No? Okay, how about this one? No? Oh, you want this one? Okay, $50, $100, $200. And he's raking in it. The guy was crazy smart. He understood, these are some of his actual notes, he understood how geometry worked in the world of art. So we can skew things, oh my God, is that 1 point perspective? We can skew things to get certain particular angles on the head and correct anatomy. But, and this is why I wanted to talk about his specific self-portrait for a second. We're talking about the human face. So the reason we're talking about him, now you can't quite see it, the room's a little bit too light, but there's actually some curtains behind him. And in those curtains, right about here-ish, there's a little tiny, behind the curtain, there's a little tiny cross, a crucifix. Understand at the time, it's really hard to see. Understand at the time, old Albert was living in a world where the church had final say-so. You know, this was above and beyond, a type of government where there was a king, there was a pope. I mean, the guy was in charge. He had the rule. And it's not even a matter of like, well, I say so, I'm the king. I mean, this guy talks to God. Can't really beat him. Doesn't get any bigger. That's the end, you know? So if the priest, or say the church, we'll just say the church, if the church didn't like you, it's tough crap, man. You lose. You don't win. You know what I mean? So we're at a time period where Albrecht, and he was a church-going fellow, and everyone in his day and age was, and this is right around kind of the Protestant Reformation. And he was kind of a fan, he supported it, he didn't want to change his religion, but he's like, yeah guys, go, question the church, have fun, have a good time. Well, the church didn't like that very much. They said either you're with us or against this kind of thing. And they didn't like that he was out making money and kind of cutting business people out of the system. They didn't like that. He really stirred the pot, he mixed things up, and people didn't like him for that. You want to make people angry, try to change something, right? So, he painted this self-portrait. And what's fun, what I always enjoy about this self-portrait specifically, is not just his beautiful long locks, although I wish I had those Jesus locks. Would that be nice? Look at that, the guy uses like a curling iron or something, I don't know. What I like about this painting so much is this hand. Right? Now, I know, it's a messed up looking hand, right? Now, unless you're making some crazy gang sign, when would your hand ever look like this? That's not comfortable, And then the pose there while you're painting, you go, oh yeah, okay, this is great. You're gonna get crazy carpal tunnel syndrome. It's not good. It's not good. You get arthritis and a claw hand. It's not good, right? So there has to be a reason that he would do this. Right? There's a symbol behind it, kind of like Van Gogh, right? There's a symbol in there. So I'm going to give you a speculation. Again, we don't know 100%, but we have a pretty dang good idea. In the background, again, very, very hidden, he literally covers over the cross. He hides it. Basically saying, you know what, church? You're not as important as you think you are, so screw you. That's step one. That angers the church, but it doesn't push them over the limit. That's just kind of like, oh, well, we're not happy with you, right? That's like kind of pushing Oliver's buttons, It's not going to get you kicked out of school, but, he's not thrilled, But then he goes one step too far. It's very commonplace in the world of painting at this time period that if you're going to have a reference to the church, say like a crucifix or something, if you're going to have a reference to the church, you have to pay homage in some way. So self-portrait, maybe I'm looking at it or I'm pointing at it like, oh, look, there's the church. It's beautiful. It's way better than I am, So not only does he cover the cross, but then he does the most egregious thing, which is much like a good selfie. He points at himself. Now, is it literally a middle finger? No, it's an index finger, but it's pretty dang close. He's basically saying, oh, the church is over here. I want you to look right here. This. I'm better. Freaking rocked the world, man. They didn't know what the hell to do. You know? I mean, they didn't know what the hell to do. I mean, picture, for a second, put it in our own terms, right? I'm going to take a selfie of myself, right? I'm going to take a selfie. All right, so I'm going to take a selfie, right? And in this selfie, I'm going to have, like, the White House. I'm going to set it on fire, and I'm going to hold, like, a match that I freaking lit the White House on fire with. And I'm going to take a selfie. Like, click. Like, I did it. You know, it was me. Right? That's what he's doing. He's saying, not only did I hide the church, but I did it! Me! It wasn't a mistake. I didn't accidentally hide the cross. I freaking did it! Like, it's, oh my God. Let me tell you how angry people were. Crazy. Off their rocker, man. They couldn't handle it. They couldn't handle it. Alright. So, we're moving on down the list here. We've only got a handful left to talk about, and then we're going to be done. Whatever time is left over, obviously, is in fact yours. As always. Alright, so we can't talk about an Art 1 class without talking about the master. Absolutely. This is old Leonardo da Vinci's work. Now, you guys know the name Da Vinci. You'd be crazy not to know, right? You know Da Vinci. So a couple times, whenever you think of Da Vinci, you think about a great artist, right? He was not only a great artist, he was a great scientist, as we see here. Right? And we'll talk about this stuff individually, but he was a great scientist. He was an engineer. If you have not seen pictures of Leonardo da Vinci's work with, say, the very first helicopter. Yeah, he made it. Say, the very first airplane. The very first tank. If you've not seen Da Vinci's tank, you need to get on that like tonight. Go home and look that up. I don't have a picture of it. It's crazy cool, and I promise you, it beats our tanks today to the ground. It's awesome. Picture like a big freaking big wooden cone without a top on it, and out of each angle it had a cannon, and it just freaking rides around like this, and just shooting freaking bullets out of every angle. It's like a death machine, right? And he comes up with it, but he's known as a painter, right? He's known as a painter because of his work with anatomy, with portraiture, right? How do you get to be skilled in portraiture? Well, it's pretty simple. What do? Well, if I want to know how the human looks, I have to draw a lot of people, but to pay a model to sit there and draw all day, it's expensive. It's a lot easier to draw dead people. Yay! Good job, man. Dead people. So, what do? Right? Well, back in the day, it was very, very frowned upon drawing a dead person. Nowadays, you go off to school if you want to be a doctor, you're going to go to the morgue. Because the best way to see a dead person, or to see what's in your bicep, is to take a dead person's, cut it open, and rip out a bicep. You're like, oh, here it is. Thank you for your bicep. That's what you do, right? You look at a dead person, you kind of figure out how the body works, right? That's what he did. But it wasn't really a good thing, right? So imagine old Leo da Vinci, right? He takes his little satchel of money and he walks over and he says, here, sir. And he hands them, he says, do you mind digging up a couple corpses for me? And the old grave robber says, okie dokie. And he goes out in the night, I'm sure he does it very happily, and he digs up a grave. Right? And he pulls out the body. Right? And he goes frolicking back. Grandma's like, right? And he goes frolicking back and he throws Grandma on the table. Right? And he says, here you go. And Da Vinci goes to town. He pulls out his little X-Acto blade and he's like, yeah, Grandma, yeah. Oh, man. But keep in mind, this is at a time where, doctors didn't really know what a wound looked like. And let's be fair, this is not exactly what Health 101 has you believe, because this is not totally correct. The guy was guessing. Let's be fair. When you rip an intestine, out, you don't really know what it looked like. We're just kind of well, spaghetti maybe? He's making this stuff up. But it's still, this is the most anatomically correct of its day, This is nowadays when you go to the doctor, they've got crazy 3D models of your human body, we can zoom in and do CAT scans of your brain. This was a CAT scan of its day. We didn't know what a womb looked like or where a baby came from. It was just one day, there's a baby. Just appeared grandma's going to, just walking to the store. Oh, no, there's another one. I don't know. We didn't know. And he figured it out, man. He figured it out. But of course, we can't talk about portraiture and Da Vinci without talking about this chick. Okay? Now, this has been completely redone with some photoshopping to make it look as if it would appear originally. Since then, it has faded. Right? You ever see a picture of the Mona Lisa, and I'll show you what it looks like today. It always looks like she's got some matted down hair, like that lady needs some volumizer or something, right? But if you look, she originally had a veil over her head. And that's not to say that she was some kind of mix and match, like he was trying to bring up pictures of like the Virgin Mary or anything with her little veil, you know. This was a hat of the day. You know, you'd wear a hat today if it was sunny out. Well, they wore veils. It was pretty common. So she's got her veil on, she's got her little curly Q hair, and there she is with her little Mona Lisa smile. So, Mona Lisa, right? The reason the Mona Lisa is so extremely famous, above and beyond just the fact that it's kind of built its own thing. I mean, to be fair, it's good, but is it that good? You know? It's not that big, it's like that big. It's not gigantic, right? Originally it had a little bit extra on the side, and was actually stolen at one time, and the artist came along with a little canvas, took out a knife, and actually cut it out of the canvas and ripped it out. So we'll never know exactly what was on either side. We believe it was just curtains. Just like red, kind of velvety curtains. But this is basically what we have, you know, obviously touched up a little bit. The reason the Mona Lisa is so very famous is twofold. It's very famous in the world of art historians because you look at it, there's not a whole lot of brushstrokes on it. You know, this is at a time when we've seen we've seen, you know, Van Gogh obviously completely generations apart, but you know, brushstrokes, paint is, or if you're using paint and you're a painter, you're using brushstrokes. Da Vinci took a moment to not only take his, you know, his painting, not only take his painting, but he would take these paintbrushes and he would go through and he'd start painting them very softly. Most of the time people are just kind of like, yep, this is good, good, good. But I mean, soft, gentle. It looks, I mean, this is a time, not just before photographs, this is a time before photographs were conceived of, you know? And he's going through and making something that looks like a photograph. It's crazy. Crazy anatomical detail, right? Let's look at a couple others. This is a self-drawing, a self-portrait of Da Vinci, obviously much, much later in his life. There aren't that many drawings of Da Vinci himself. Here's kind of a cleaned up version. This is a more recent picture. Actually came out a couple years ago, say like about 5 years ago. This appeared. People didn't know it existed. So imagine like, what would be something cool? Like, okay, for example, how many of you, what's your favorite band? Tell me a band. I don't care.
Rubber band.
The Rubber Band? That'd be a good band name though, wouldn't it? Have you seen the Rubber Band? Alright, so what do you listen to? Okay, Switchfoot, alright. So imagine, right? Okay, so Switchfoot's around, they're rocking out, they're doing their thing. I don't know, whatever. Right? Say 500 years from now, all of a sudden somebody goes, oh hey guys, by the way, did you know that they had this other album you never heard of? Just pulls it out of their butt and like, oh here's this for you. Like, out of nowhere. I mean, how could we have lost a Da Vinci? How do you do that, right? But out of nowhere, we discover this painting. They've analyzed it since. It's pretty interesting. Again, but look at the anatomy, right? I mean, it's soft. This is a painting. And keep in mind, this is not like he goes out to the store and buys paint, right? It wasn't like that. We're talking like he was frolicking in the meadow, finds some freaking, you know, like leaves and stuff, takes out his mortar and pestle, throws in some like, you know, sheep intestine goo for like a volumizer, and starts grinding this stuff up. He's like, oh, that looks like skin, and he starts painting with it. You know, I mean, this is like as much science and chemistry as it gets.
I literally watched that documentary.
Oh yeah, it's a good documentary. It's a very good documentary. So not only is he doing anatomy, not only is he doing engineering, but he's also doing painting all at the same time. And this is all kind of working together. His engineering helps his anatomy helps his drawing to get these beautiful portraits. But the Mona Lisa, on top of being infamous for its brushstrokes, is even more infamous, not in the art world, but in the historical world. Because, and this sounds kind of dumb at first, but bear with me, we don't know who the hell she is. We don't know who the Mona Lisa is. Now, of course, you're thinking to yourself, well, there's a lot of people I don't know, right? You go on Facebook for more than 2 seconds, you're going to find someone you don't know. Right? That's not a mystery. That's just, you don't know them, right? But keep in mind, at this time, you could not have a painting made unless you were like uber famous or you had lots of money. If, you know, your husband owned like a shippery and you had docks and people come in and all these ships come in and like had money, right? You had to commission these pieces of artwork. So imagine for a second, again, 500 years from now, right? Imagine that someone finds a painting, you know, and it's of you, right? They're not going to be like, who could it be, right? They don't know you, right? But imagine if they find a painting of like Obama, and they're like, who's this guy, right? It's almost like stupid, like, what do you mean, who is this guy? Right? This is the president, you should know the president, you know what I mean? So to have a painting of somebody, and to not know who they are, is kind of ridiculous at this time period. That's where the mystery comes from. How did this lady get painted if we don't know who she is? She's not famous, who the hell is she, right? So I'll tell you this. There are a lot of speculations, and I won't tell you one is particularly correct. And I'm going to tell you what my personal speculation is, okay? So, speculation number one. She was some lady, and he was just practicing. Okay. That's easy enough, but kind of boring. Yeah. Speculation number two. Leonardo da Vinci, which was popular at the time, was a homosexual, and he wanted to see what he looked like in drag. Thus, I mean, things line up pretty close. You know, maybe he was just looking at a mirror and he wanted to see what he would look like as a lady. That is 100% a possibility. We don't know. I'm going to tell you and there are more, but I'm going to tell you my personal opinion. Okay, I've done some research. Take this with a grain of salt. I'm not an art historian by any means. My personal opinion is this. The similarities to Leonardo da Vinci's face and hers are very striking. And it does raise an idea like, was he looking in a mirror? Was he looking at himself when he was doing this? My opinion is this. You have to know a little bit about who Da Vinci was first. Okay? Da Vinci, when he was originally born, old dearie mommy dearest, kicked the bucket and done. Daddy didn't want it, right? Daddy said, get out of here. So at this point, Leonardo da Vinci, aged like 2, is a bastard, in the technical term. Not in the I don't like him kind of way. He's alone. He's got no family. He's an orphan, right? His dad doesn't want him. Mom's dead. What do you do, right? So they give him over to the state, or in this case, the country of Italy. That's why, if you ever wondered, the name Da Vinci sounds kind of stupid. Like Da Vinci, what does that mean? Like Da Vinci, right? And then, right? His name technically is Leonardo of Vinci. He's owned by the state. He's an owner, right? It'd be like me being Christopher of Pittsburgh, right? And that's what it is. He's Leonardo of Vinci, Da Vinci, right? That's what it is. Right? Okay, so now, take it one step further. Now, he becomes a prolific painter. He makes a life for himself. He's an inventor. He makes, in essence, thousands upon thousands of dollars. I mean, he's well-to-do. He's pretty well-known. He's famous. Now, there's a lot of other things going on in his life, especially in his teen years. You can read up about that yourself. But imagine you're getting a little older. You've always kind of wondered, what does your family look like? You know what your dad looks like. He shunned you. You know what he looks like. You don't forget a face like that. But you've never met your mom. She died. He has no idea what his mom looks like, ever. In my estimation, this is totally me, in my estimation, he hired a random lady just to pose. He drew, the body, the overview, kind of the face, the head, and then he took his own features, looking at a mirror, kind of a polished piece of metal. He looked at his own features, and using his features, made what he thought was kind of a composite of his mother. So in my estimation, knowing his background, I would assume that the Mona Lisa doesn't actually exist because she's his estimation of his mom. That's my guess. I don't know. So, I want to take 10 seconds, just 10 seconds, and we'll boil this all back down and be done for the day. I want to show you one more artist for the day, okay? But I'm not going to tell you who it is. I'm kind of curious as to what you think, if you like the artwork, okay? Hang on one second. It's an artist that you've heard of, I promise you that. Okay, let's see here. Sorry. All right. Okay. All right. It's an artist that you've heard of. So think of like famous artists, okay? All right. All right. So we've got kind of a watercolor painting. What I want you guys to think about a little bit, is how whenever you make your own pieces of artwork, how it's kind of a portrait, in essence, of yourself. Even if it's a still life, even if it's a landscape, in this case, a picture of land. Even if it's a landscape, it's still kind of a portrait of you, right? You kind of put yourself into it, right? I'll show you another one. Here's a picture. This is a self-portrait of a little boy. Here, I'll show you another. This is another landscape. Hold on, calm down. So we've got this landscape. It's a watercolor landscape. It's gentle, right? Think of the artists that you know that paint in watercolors. Think of the artists that you know that paint in watercolors. Okay, I'm going to show you another picture of that same self-portrait for a second. See if it catches for you. Okay, here you go. A couple little, sketches. Obviously, it's watercolor. He's drawn around it. It is a boy. I can tell you that by the type of dress it is a male. So think for a second. Who do you think it is? Okay. All right. Now, if you think you know, and I'm not going to put you on the spot. If you think you know, go ahead and raise your hand real quick. Okay, we've got one. Anybody else? Want to take a stab? Okay, I'm just going to go around real quick. What do you think? Okay, what do you think? What do you think? Bingo! Bingo! Many of you guys already knew, I'm sure, that Hitler was in fact an artist. But did you know he created stuff like that? I mean, this is good. It's really cool looking.
It looks like Pompeii.
Looks like a can. What's that?
He still wasn't accepted. That is why he started getting involved.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Later on, we'll talk more about Hitler whenever we get to different time periods. Obviously, he was a big effect in the art world as well. There's a whole time period where a type of artwork called German Expressionism comes into vogue. And what he does is Hitler himself opens up a gallery. He was eventually going to open his own gallery, but he opens a gallery that literally makes fun of artwork. Like, he hangs up art he doesn't like and hates on it. Like it's like the Reddit of its day. Like, it was a really twisted time period. We'll talk more about that later. So, leave your sketchbooks out. I got one last note for you to take. So, obviously a Da Vinci painting, right? And we talked already about this being a profile drawing and this being a portrait drawing, right? What I want you to think about, and I'm going to do a demo for you tomorrow on how to draw. We're going to go step by step together on how to draw the human face. So it's not that daunting to you. It can be very intimidating, right? It can be really intimidating. Death is like looking at you, man. Creeping on you. It can be really intimidating to think about the levels of complexity that are in just the human face, right? We've got bone structure to think about. We've got muscular structure and fat. And then all of the other, put skin over top of it. Oh my gosh. It's crazy. Crazy, right? There's a lot of different details that go into drawing the human face, but I'm going to show you some tricks of the trade that are going to allow you to take your own skills that you already have from doing still life, from doing non-objective art, and from doing one-point perspective. We're going to combine all three, and we're going to make a very realistic face, I promise. Because it's not about mastering all of this stuff. It's not about mastering all of the intricacies and the names and the weird little Latin things, and you should learn those later on in life. But for this Art 1 class, what I'm more focusing on is how do we actually draw this, right? How do we take something like this and make it a little more realistic, right? Because at the end of the day, the human face is very, very important, right? You have to think about what's underneath of the human face. What angles are we talking about? Where does everything go? Because instantly, you see a face and you know who it is, even if it's someone who we're not quite sure about. Any guesses? No? Me neither. How about this one, though? Right?
Oh, yes, it is. South Park.
Right? It is. It's totally South Park. Right? So even if we take something that's cartoony and make it realistic, you still know, because we know faces. We remember faces. So we're going to take it all one step further. So, please, if you would, in your notes, we're going to write down these guys real quick. These are the only 5 that I want you to take away from as far as kind of vocab terms. Right? I'm going to explain them to you while you're writing. So, we have, first and foremost, we have the frontal bone, which is right there. We've got the old nasal bone. We've got the maxilla, kind of taking over by that bridge between your eye socket and your teeth. The zygomatic bone, that sounds fun. It's like doesn't that sound like a TV special? Like, buy a new zygomatic bone. It cuts and slices. Zygomatic. I don't know, that's just me. And then finally the mandible, or kind of the jaw. Now I'm going to explain these to you, just very, very quickly here, so that you understand why these particular bones, why I've selected these particular bones, why they're so important to you. So, The maxilla is just kind of nice. It kind of fills out the face. Obviously, if you have, you got to think about how your cheeks and your teeth work together. There's a bone in there, right? The frontal bone is extremely important, right? Think about your human brain, right? Think how your brain works, okay? Your brain develops from the bottom going up to the top. That's how it works, okay? So that you can think about it. If I go for my brain here, if I start in the back, I've got this kind of right here, my brain stem connects into my spine and allows me to do this, right? If it wasn't for the brain stem, I would just lie here. I would be a quadriplegic. I couldn't move. It'd be horrible. So I need that, and that kind of works its way up, going to the back. Then we get to kind of back in this area back here, right by my bald spot. That area back there, we're talking about basic information, right? Stuff that you don't necessarily have any control over. So like digestion. I can't stop my heart from beating. I can't do it. I've tried so hard. I can't do it, right? So this is stuff that I have no control over, right? It's just a basic automatic function, okay? Then we work a little bit more forward now, kind of sort of the back right about here. That's stuff that is automatic, but that I can control. So say like, for example, breathing and blinking. I can't do it. No, I can hold my breath, but eventually I have to breathe. I can force myself to blink, but if I don't think about it, I'm going to do it anyway, right? So that's kind of over in this area, right? Then we get to the middle. Now the middle, again, I'm simplifying things down. The middle of your brain has a lot of information. On the sides, we've got eyeballs and information over there. We've got hearing and all this kind of cool stuff that we need to interact with the world. But the middle is also going to be kind of basic stuff. So think to yourself like 1st through 5th grade, right? Basic math. 1 + 1, 2, right? Simple stuff, right? So you want to protect this. But the reason, I'm going to sound like a parent for a second, the reason you should always wear a helmet when you go for a bike ride is because this right here, the old frontal bone, this is the moneymaker right here. You want to get a job? This is what you need, okay? This is what separates us from like chimpanzees. I know I have long arms that look like orangutan arms, but I promise, I am a human. Right up in here, this frontal cortex area, this is where you take calculus, it's here. Right? So imagine that you're kind of like, you're having a good time, you go for a bike ride, and ding, 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 ding. All of a sudden you hit a rock, and oh my God, right? Really, really bad if you don't wear a helmet. Please, this, protect, okay? So that's why the frontal bone is so very, very important, right? Then we can move down. We've got the old mandible, that's your jaw. Now here's something really fun about the mandible, or kind of the jaw area, right? We rarely think about our jaw because I'm just flapping it too much, right? Think about kind of your forearm for a second, right? Your forearm can bend up and down. It can't go backwards. No, I have an elbow. It can't go backwards. And it cannot go side to side. It can't go side to side. I can move my shoulder side to side. That's all good and fine, but I can't go up and down. That's all it does. That's all it does, right? My jaw can go up and down, right? It can go side to side, and front back. Like, all the way around, right? It's moving however I want it to move, right? It does whatever I want it to do, right? Because it's free floating, it's just kind of floating in there. The only thing that's holding your jaw on is the old zygomatic bone. So imagine my jaw is here, the zygomatic wraps around him, and he can float freely while the zygomatic has got him covered. You see that? You break your zygomatic bone, your jaw is going to fall out of place, and you're going to drool a whole lot. It's not good. So you need both of these guys together, right? But my favorite bone to talk about on the human face, and I mean there's lots of bones, my absolute positive favorite bone to talk about is this one right here. Now, maybe it's because I've broken mine a handful of times, and I won't say it's because of a fist, but it's because of a fist. Anyway, so, see, the flopping mandible gets this thing broken. I'm just saying, you say things and it happens. Anyway, so let's talk about this for 1 second. Take an examination of the nasal bone. Right? We've got 2 little cracks right here. We've got a little crack here and a little crack there. You see it? Okay? Alright. Think to yourself for 1 second, just logically, why the hell would I have little tiny pieces right here, as opposed to one like super formed bone? Like, wouldn't it make more sense to have one big solid bone right there? I mean, it would be perfect, right? My nose would never get broken. It'd be great. It'd be like rock solid, man. Right? Doesn't that make more sense? Why the hell would we have 2 little bones there? Think about it for a second. Just think about it. Logically. You don't need a degree in health. What do you think?
Because if you have one full piece and it breaks,
That's your whole freaking face, right? Absolutely. On the nasal bone. No, you're absolutely right, man. So check it. Stand up a second. Say something rude to me. You jerk! Right? So now, slow motion style. Here I come, I'm going to kill him. Right? I'm going right into his face and kapowie! Thank you, that was good. I have destroyed his face. Right? And that's one singular bug, you're absolutely right. Not only does his nose break, which is bad, but now like his eyeball falls out, and his teeth fall out, and then goes, oh my god! And he's like flopping around, and everything's falling apart, and like he goes home, and like, what happened? They're like, somebody punched me in the face! It's not good. It's not good, right? But, not that you want to break your nose, but if I punch him right in the old nose, these two little pieces pop in, right? Doing two things. One, they pop, ensuring that I can still breathe, which is the goal of the nose, to breathe, right? Notice no boogers, right? If they're in there now, right? But if that collapses, not only can I still breathe, but my eyeballs and my cheeks and my nasal bone, my maxilla, my mandible, my zygomatic, my frontal bone are all still okie dokie, right? Your body is so finitely made, it is ready to collapse. Why do you think we have two of everything? If I lose one, I'm still good to go. Right? Why do we have two eyeballs? Because you can get poked in one and you're like, I'm still good. And you get pirated, right? That's great fun. So, think about that as we're going through and talking about the human portrait. Right? Think about all of the things. And understand one last note, and then we'll be done for the day. Understand that your face is not symmetrical. Okay? I know it seems like it is. I've got an eyeball over here and an eyeball over there. I've got two big old nostrils. I have a big mouth right in the middle. But I promise you it is not symmetrical. Go home, look at yourself in the mirror. Try your best not to crack the mirror. I don't have mirrors in my house for that exact reason. I look at them, they just shatter. Try your best. But look in the mirror and start to realize that your face is not actually symmetrical. Right? If you take a second, and please don't because it's creepy with all you staring at me. But this eye is actually a little bit lower down and kind of droops a little bit on this side. When I get really sleepy, I get like Quasimodo looking. Like it's like, right? But this face kind of droops a little bit. But I have a couple scars here and there. This nose is a little bit high. Everything's slightly off, right? It's not perfect because we're organisms. We are organic. There's no machine making us perfect. If you get really bored and you happen to have it, take a mirror and kind of like hold it to the side of your face so you can see your face perfectly mirrored. It looks janked up as it is not good. We're not used to seeing faces perfectly symmetrical. We think they are because 1 and 1 make 2, right? That makes sense. But I promise you, your eyes are not perfect. Your nose is all sorts of messed up. And if it's not, come and see me. Good? Right? Thank you guys. You're done. Thank you very much.
How was it?